Hey guys. Tonight we're headed somewhere wild. No. Not Troy. Not Olympus. Think smaller. Think darker. Think damp. You're lying on a cold stone floor in a quiet mountain cave. Way up on Mount Cyllene in Arcadia. It smells like moss, goat hair, and warm earth. Your blanket? A patch of animal hide. Your lullaby? The soft snoring of your mortal mother. Maya, one of the many conquests of Zeus. And you? You're Hermes. But not the god yet, just the newborn version. And yes, you're already plotting your first heist. You're not even out of your first swaddle when you realize naps are boring. Cooing is beneath you. And being the 13th Olympian? That's going to take some panache. You blink at the faint firelight flickering from a small hearth and decide definitively that your destiny includes mischief, innovation, and maybe some cattle. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch your newborn arms and kick off your swaddle with the flair of a magician shedding a cape. Your first breath was a dramatic gasp, not a cry. Your eyes? Already scheming. Outside, the wind moves through the peaks like a distant flute. Maybe foreshadowing something, or maybe just reminding you it's time to crawl out of this cave. Now, here's the funny thing. Most gods wait decades, centuries even, to start making a name for themselves. But you've decided to commit your first felony before sunset. Respect. You wriggle, roll, and finally manage to get on all fours. It's clumsy, but impressive, like watching a baby goat try salsa. You bump into a rock. You faceplant, but nothing stops you. Outside, sunlight cuts across the trees, dappling the rocks, and there, far in the distance, is the field, the sacred field, the one where Apollo, Golden Boy's sun god, keeps his very expensive cows. Now, let's be honest, no one needs 50 cows. Not even a god, especially not one who plays the lyre all day and writes odes to his own cheekbones. So, really, you're just redistributing celestial resources. A socialist icon, if you will. You clamber down the rocky path. Pebbles skittering behind you. The forest opens up before you. Pines bending just slightly in the breeze. Birds chirp nervously. Do they sense what's coming? Maybe, maybe not, but a few hours old infant god is definitely on the move. You cross a stream, your reflection rippling past like a question mark. What kind of god will you be? Trickster? Thief? Poet? Well, all of the above, probably. You pick a flower and immediately eat it. It's bitter. You make a face. Lesson learned. Now, here's a bit of mainstream myth. Mount Cyllene was considered sacred long before your little divine adventure. It's one of those places where the lines between gods and mortals blur. Where legends are said to walk by night and whisper to goats. Scholars debate whether the cave you're born in was real or symbolic. Some say it's just a metaphor for the mind's hidden mischief. But tonight, it's your origin story, and it's very much real. You reach a grassy clearing just as the sun begins its lazy descent. And there, grazing like they own the place, are Apollo's sacred cattle. Majestic, glossy, slightly bored, you narrow your baby eyes. Target acquired. But before you steal them, yes. We're getting there. Something catches your eye. It's round. It's slow. It's a turtle. A big one. The kind that makes that faint dragging sound through the grass like it has nowhere to be and all day to get there. You squat beside it, curious. It looks up at you with eternal wisdom and zero concern. In that moment, the spark of invention hits you, faster than any prophecy. Deeper than any oracle's trance. You reach into the recesses of your divine baby brain and think, this thing could play music. Now, this is where the fringe tidbit comes in. Some versions of the myth say you killed the turtle, scooped out its insides, stretched cow gut across the shell, and created the first lyre. Others say you found an empty shell, added reeds and strings, and strummed the very first melody while the cows grazed quietly behind you. Scholars still argue whether the instrument came before the cow theft, or whether the turtle was simply a spontaneous act of artistic cruelty. Either way, boom, music. The sound is strange, soft, sweet, melancholy. It doesn't feel like it should come from something so simple. But there it is. You pluck another string, and another. You laugh, delighted. You've made something new. Not even Apollo has done that yet. But let's not get too carried away, you still have a crime to commit. And that, my musically inclined friend, is exactly where we're headed next. So, you've just invented music, no big deal. 1 second, you're a newborn with questionable morals. And the next, you're plucking divine melodies out of a turtle shell like it's your birthright. Honestly, it kind of is. But we're not here to rest on your artistic laurels. You've got cows to steal. You tuck the new lyre under one chubby arm. It's still warm from your impromptu construction, and make your way toward Apollo's pasture. The sun is sliding westward now, casting long shadows that flicker like ancient secrets across the ground. You move quietly, almost respectfully. Almost. Now, the cows. Oh, these are no ordinary bovines. These are sacred cattle, glossy hide, golden horns, and a moo that vibrates in the bones of Mount Olympus. Apollo, ever the golden child, tends them obsessively, he names them, sings to them, probably braids their tails when no one's looking. But tonight, he's nowhere in sight. Classic oversight. You approach the herd slowly, whispering soft nonsense. Come on now, this is for the greater good. And possibly for snacks. The cows blink at you. Confused but compliant. You don't smell like a threat. You smell like ambrosia and baby powder. Here's your genius move. You tie bundles of grass to their tails and coax them into walking backward. Yes, backward, because you, baby Hermes, have already grasped one of life's key truths: tracking footprints is a thing. And you're not about to leave a trail. Fringe fact? In ancient Greece, backward walking was actually used symbolically in certain rituals, often to confuse spirits or reverse a curse. Coincidence? Maybe, but your use of it here is both practical and spiritually disruptive. A win-win. One by one, you guide the cows backward down the mountainside. It's an absurd, slow-motion parade. You hum as you go, plucking your lyre now and then, just to keep the mood festive. One cow stops to eat a bush. You wait patiently. You're stealing sacred livestock, not rushing. There's an art to this. Behind you, the path vanishes into forest. The hoofprints lead nowhere. You're erasing your own myth as you make it. You take the long route back to your cave, looping through groves of olive trees and beneath fig branches heavy with unpicked fruit. You pass a farmer who looks up from his field, blinks, and rubs his eyes. He'll tell the story for years. A toddler leading 50 cows backward while strumming a turtle. Now, here's a little mainstream nugget. These cows weren't just symbols of wealth. They were part of Apollo's divine identity. In some versions of the myth, they even breathed fire, which, let's be honest, would have made this theft a lot spicier. But tonight, they're just cows, very obedient cows. At that, and speaking of things on fire, you eventually lead them into a hidden grotto. A quiet spot, off the main path, shielded by vines and shadows. Here, you make camp. You tie the cows loosely to nearby trees and settle in, munching on figs and playing the lyre like a campfire bard with no audience. But you're not quite done. Because in a moment of whimsy, or maybe overkill, you decide to sacrifice 2 of the cows to the gods. You build a crude altar out of stones, stack some wood, and, well, the rest is a little smoky. PG-13. Remember, suffice it to say, it's the first sacrificial act you've ever performed. And it will not be your last. Now, you don't eat the meat. You're still half a baby. After all, but you do divide it carefully into 12 portions, symbolically offering it to the 12 Olympians. All of them, including yourself. Yes, in a stunning move of cosmic confidence. You, hours-old Hermes, offered tribute to your own divine name. Historians still argue whether this act was pure ego or a clever power play to force Zeus's hand later. Either way, it's iconic. Satisfied, you wipe your hands on a patch of moss, sling the lyre back over your shoulder, and stroll, forward this time, back toward the cave. It's deep night when you finally wriggle back under Maya's cloak. Pretending nothing has happened, you burp once, softly. You look around, no witnesses, no evidence, just the faint smell of smoked beef and divine ambition. And then, you sleep. A little god nap, the calm before the storm. Because come morning, a certain sun god is going to notice something's missing, and you are about to meet him. Dawn slides across Mount Cyllene like honey on marble, slow, golden, and full of dread. Somewhere far off, Apollo stretches, sings a scale, and gets ready for his daily glorification session. Hair perfect, smile lethal, everything shining. And then, mid-routine, he hears it. Silence. No lowing, no hoofbeats. No cow gossip. Nothing. Apollo's brow furrows. He squints at the empty pasture where 50 sacred cows once roamed. Now replaced by some extremely unbothered grass. Cue the meltdown. You, of course, are still tucked inside your swaddle like a crime burrito. Drooling slightly. But the world above is shifting. Apollo is already flying, literally, across the hills. Golden chariot blazing like the world's most aggressive Uber. He's checking every field, interrogating every shepherd, and getting real shouty with a few confused birds. Mainstream history note? Apollo was associated with prophecy, healing, archery, and music, but also divine retribution. The guy did not take personal offenses lightly. He once cursed a mortal just for beating him in a music contest. And now? His cows are gone. His patience? Also gone. Eventually, Apollo picks up on the faintest clue. a few twisted branches. A confused farmer mumbling about a baby with a weird shell, and, most damningly, the fact that the trail of hoofprints seems to vanish. Suspiciously vanish. He narrows his eyes. He's been around long enough to know when someone's pulling divine trickery. And so, with divine speed, he makes a beeline for the one place no one would suspect a mastermind to be hiding, the cave of Maya. Your mortal mother. Let's pause for a fringe detail here. Some lesser-known versions of the myth suggest that Maya wasn't all that surprised by her baby's extracurricular activities. She was, after all, one of the Pleiades, sky sisters born from Atlas himself, meaning she knew a thing or two about cosmic weirdness. Still, even she probably wasn't expecting a full solar god to come barreling into her living room before breakfast. Which brings us to you. Sweet little Hermes. Fast asleep, or at least pretending to be. Apollo bursts in like an angry golden storm cloud. You blink, yawn, maybe give a little giggle. Just baby things. And then the accusations fly. This child has stolen my cows. Apollo roars. I felt it. Maya rolls her eyes. He was born yesterday. I know what I saw. Apollo insists, scanning the cave for clues. There was music, smoke, backward hooves. You, meanwhile, do your best impression of a completely helpless infant. You suck your thumb. You gurgle. You somehow give off the distinct aura of being barely sentient. It's masterful. Apollo points a finger at you dramatically. He did it. Maya scoffs. He can't even hold his own head up yet. And here's where things get spicy, rather than argue. Apollo snatches you up, swaddle and all. You squawk, more out of performance than panic, and suddenly, you're being whisked up to Olympus like a toddler on trial. Now, historians still argue whether this divine kidnapping was legal or just wildly impulsive. Some say Apollo had the right, as a god of justice. Others say he was acting more like a sleep-deprived older brother. But regardless, you're about to meet Dad. Yes, Zeus, the big thunder guy himself. And while Zeus isn't known for parenting, more for fathering, he's still technically in charge. Olympus operates on a let's not make this a paperwork thing level of governance. So when Apollo storms into the golden halls with a baby in his arms and a rant on his lips, Zeus listens, barely. The throne room sparkles with divine light. Gold columns, silver floors, a peacock screeching somewhere in the distance. Probably Hera's fault. Apollo lays out the crime. The theft, the backwards hoofprints, the musical turtle shell. And you? You just blink up at Zeus and drool a little. It's an Oscar-worthy performance. But Zeus isn't easily fooled. He lifts one bushy eyebrow. You can feel it. This is the moment where your charm has to land. So, naturally, you tell your first lie. Not just a baby noise. A full sentence. Clear, musical, mildly sarcastic. I was asleep. I didn't take any cows. Maybe it was someone else? A pause. Everyone stares. Maya facepalms. Apollo sputters. Zeus chuckles. And it's not just a dad chuckle. It's a thunderhead chuckle. He's impressed. Because in that moment, he sees it, the potential, the cunning, the raw, untamed chaos that Olympus honestly needs a little more of. So he says, nothing. Which, in God terms, is as good as a free pass. But you're not off the hook yet. Apollo still looks like he's about to explode. And next section? You're going to break out the real charm, your homemade lyre. So here you are, a baby god, mid-swindle, held like a sack of flour by a furious Apollo in the grand hall of Olympus. The ceiling shimmers with clouds. Marble columns gleam. A few lesser gods awkwardly pretend they aren't watching. But let's be honest, they absolutely are. Because drama this juicy doesn't come along every century. Apollo paces, ranting. Zeus lounges, amused. Maia sighs with the weariness of a mother who knew this day would come. And you? You decide it's time to go from criminal to composer. With a cherubic smile, you tug gently at your swaddle until your secret weapon slips free, the lyre. You hold it up with the gravity of a game-changer. It glints in the divine light, a turtle shell strung with gut. Crude but beautiful, like a relic from a dream. No one in the room quite knows what it is. Not yet. And then you strum. The first notes float out like golden mist. Soft, strange, trembling with something no one can name. Not even the gods. Apollo stops mid-sentence. Zeus leans forward. Even Hera lowers her peacock feather fan. The music rises, slow and deliberate, a lullaby for immortals, a song stitched together from forest wind and moonlight and the faint rustle of stolen cowhide. You pluck the strings with tiny fingers, like the instrument has always been part of your body. And in that moment, Olympus holds its breath. Apollo stares. The rage drains from his face. Replaced with wonder? Here's the thing. Apollo is the god of music. He knows every note that's ever been sung. Every hymn offered at every dusty temple. And this is new. Which means you've just done something that doesn't happen often up here. You've surprised a god. Mainstream historical aside, the lyre would go on to become one of the defining instruments of classical antiquity. Used in everything from royal ceremonies to drunken poetry contests. Its influence is deeply woven into Greek culture. But tonight, it's making its debut, played by a diapered delinquent. You finish the tune with a gentle flourish. The last note lingers in the air like dew on glass. Silence. And then, applause. From Zeus, of all people. A low, rumbling clap that sounds like distant thunder. Well, he says, that's new. You look at Apollo. He's still processing. Eyes glazed. Jaw slack. The divine equivalent of seeing his entire Spotify Wrapped get wrecked by a toddler. Finally, he speaks. I want it. You cock your tiny head. The instrument? He nods. Slowly. Yes, that. I'll trade you for it. And just like that, the clouds part metaphorically and politically. You bargain like a pro. You want the cows back? Sure, but maybe also a shiny staff. Something with authority. Something snaky. Apollo, still dazed, agrees. He gives you the caduceus, a golden rod wrapped with twin serpents. Humming with potential. He doesn't know what it does yet. You don't know what it does yet. But it's cool. And that's enough for now. This is one of those myth moments where historians disagree. Some say the lyre was a peace offering. Others believe the trade was more transactional, an exchange of power between two gods learning to respect one another's talents. Scholars still argue whether Apollo truly forgave you, or just filed your name under "Watch closely." But that doesn't matter right now. What matters is this. You just turned theft into art. lies into lullabies. And Apollo, god of prophecy, just got played. The vibe shifts. You're no longer the accused. You're the inventor, the musician, the negotiator? Zeus chuckles again and mutters something about keeping this one close. You've officially entered the divine radar. And not just as Maia's surprisingly mobile baby. Apollo, to his credit, keeps his word. The cows are returned. You both shake hands, or tiny hand to God palm. At least, and suddenly the court is no longer a courtroom. It's a concert hall. Your concert. The lyre is handed over to Apollo with ceremony. He plucks a note, frowns, adjusts the tuning. You watch, amused. He'll never play it quite like you did. But that's okay. Because now, you've got other things to do. Bigger tricks to plan. And a whole pantheon to impress. You leave the halls of Olympus not as a scolded child, but as a player, not just in music, but in the grander game of divine politics. You've bartered with Apollo, amused Zeus, and got your cows back without being turned into a constellation. That's a win in anyone's mythology. Tucked under your arm now is the caduceus, your shiny new toy/symbol of divine authority. It hums gently, almost like it knows it's important. A golden rod, twined with two serpents that seem to move ever so slightly when you're not looking. You twirl it experimentally, and it emits a soft chime, like wind bells caught in a breeze that only gods can hear. Let's take a historical detour for a second. The caduceus is often confused today with the rod of Asclepius. That's the one with one snake and no wings. Used in medicine, but your staff? It's a messenger's staff, winged, serpentine, and absolutely dripping in symbolism. Historians still argue whether you created it or Apollo gifted it. But tonight, it's yours, and it's about to become the most iconic wand in mythological fashion history. You descend from Olympus like a rock star stepping off stage. A few nymphs wave. A satyr trips over a bush staring at your sandals. Standard. Back on Earth. You're feeling jazzed, alive, ready for the next trick. And that's when Zeus calls you back. Not with thunder. Not with fanfare. Just a small whisper on the wind, curling into your ear like a divine ringtone. You teleport, because of course you do, and find yourself once again before the big guy. You've got potential, Zeus says, stroking his beard, a real boundary crosser. You blink, unsure if it's a compliment or a setup. Zeus continues, I'm officially making you the god of boundaries, of transitions, of roads, of lyres. You smile wide, thanks, and thieves, even better, and shepherds, why not, and athletes, cool, and, dreams, sure, throw it in, and just like that, your resume grows by 10 titles. You're now the divine patron of all things in between. Doors, journeys, crossroads, and yes, even the awkward moment between a lie and the moment someone believes it. Here's a quirky tidbit. In many ancient Greek households, tiny statues of you were placed near thresholds, called Hermes, to guard passageways and ward off bad vibes. You literally became the god people prayed to when they didn't know which way to go. Very on brand. And while you're still technically an infant, Zeus decides it's time for your first real job. Messenger duty. He hands you a scroll sealed with lightning-shaped wax. Take this to Hades, he says casually, as if delivering mail to the god of the dead is no big deal. You blink again. The underworld Hades? Zeus nods. Yep, just a quick trip. Now, this is where most baby gods might cry. Or faint. Or throw a divine tantrum. Not you. You grin. Because nothing says, chaotic career path, like skipping toddlerhood and heading straight into the land of the dead. So you adjust your new winged sandals. They're a little tight but stylish. Clutch your staff. Tuck the scroll into your belt. And take off. Literally. The sandals lift you off the ground with a soft whoosh. The wind catching your curls as you soar southward. Forests blur below. Rivers gleam. The world stretches out like a map drawn just for you. Below, mortals go about their lives, offering prayers, harvesting olives, arguing over goat prices. They don't know it yet. But you're their new patron saint of sneaky victories and smooth exits. And you? You're just getting started. Next stop. The gates of the underworld. You descend toward the edge of the world, where the air gets quiet and the sun politely refuses to follow. The clouds start thinning into ash. The trees grow crooked, leaning like they're whispering secrets to each other. And far ahead, nestled between cliffs that seem to breathe, is a place few gods tread lightly, the entrance to the underworld. You hover for a moment, sandals flapping gently, your caduceus twirling in your hand like a baton of barely restrained mischief. Below you lies the river Styx, black as spilled ink, and the shore where mortals no longer walk. A faint mist curls upward. It smells like stone and something ancient, like incense that's been burning since time forgot to look at the clock. The gates loom tall and metal, more symbolic than practical. Really, because no one wants to break into the land of the dead. But you've got a scroll from Zeus and the confidence of a baby god who just tricked his way into a job promotion. You step forward, and there he is, Charon, the ferryman. He's hunched, cloaked, and exactly as grumpy as you'd expect from someone who's rowed ghosts across a cursed river for a few thousand years. He squints at you. No coin? You grin. Nope. But I've got a scroll from Dad. You flash the seal. He grunts, then gestures toward the skiff, which rocks gently on the oily black water. You hop in, sandals still levitating a bit. Because even here, you can't resist some flair. The journey across the Styx is slow, quiet, awkward. You try to hum. Charon doesn't appreciate it. You pluck a string on your lyre. He sighs. Eventually, you settle for counting mist swirls and mentally ranking the top 10 dramatic god entrances of all time. Yours today is solidly at number 4. Finally, the shore appears, gray, shadowed, and full of whispering shades. And at the heart of it all? Hades. He doesn't rise when you approach. He rarely does, but his presence wraps around the space like velvet dipped in shadow. Crowned in obsidian, seated on a throne of bone and dark gold, he raises an eyebrow as you land with a soft hop and a cheeky smile. You must be Maia's child, he says, voice like a door closing slowly. The musical one. That's me, you beam. Special delivery. You hand him the scroll. He opens it, reads, and doesn't react, at least. Not visibly. Zeus's request? Something administrative. Probably sold transfer quotas. Or interdepartmental arguments with the Fates. Even the dead need paperwork. Apparently. But then, Hades eyes your staff. The caduceus, he murmurs. Interesting. Very, boundary crossing. You nod proudly. I cross everything now. Roads, borders, lies, moods. He actually chuckles. Barely, but it counts. Walk with me, he says, rising slowly. You follow, stepping carefully through fields of asphodel where the dead drift like dandelion seeds on invisible wind. Now for our historical insert. In classical mythology, Hermes was not only a messenger, he was the psychopomp, a guide of souls. He didn't rule the underworld, but he was one of the few gods allowed to travel freely between the living and the dead. Historians still argue whether this role was always part of his identity, or something he earned through early missions like this one. Back to the gloom. Hades gestures to a passageway of stone, lined with flickering torches. You'll be the one to bring the souls down, he says, to show them the way. Not judge them, just guide. You tilt your head. So I get to fly and freak people out during their final moments? Precisely. You grin. Love that. He pauses, then hands you a small coin. For the next time, don't annoy Karen. You pocket it. No promises. The tour ends at the edge of a chasm where the three-headed dog Cerberus slumbers, curled up like a boulder made of nightmares. You wave at him. He growls faintly in his sleep. You make a mental note to bring snacks next time. As you rise back toward the land of light, you realize something. This job isn't just errands and pranks. It's power. Real power. The kind that moves between worlds. That sings softly in the silence between life and death. You're not just the god of mischief anymore. You're the god of movement. And you're only just beginning to move. You emerge from the underworld like a leaf on the breeze, winged sandals carrying you out of the gloom and into the soft haze of a sleepy Greek afternoon. The mortal world stretches below in all its sun-warmed, olive-scented glory, and while the journey has been enlightening, your first divine mission completed, you are absolutely itching for a proper caper. Which brings us to Argus. Argus Panoptes, to be specific, a giant with 100 eyes. Never all closed at once. Hera's favorite bodyguard, the surveillance system of ancient mythology. And your next target. The mission is simple. Hera, in a fit of jealousy that's pretty on brand, has turned a nymph named Io into a cow. A literal one. Zeus, naturally, wants her freed, but Io, the cow nymph, not a planet yet, is being guarded by Argus, whose job is to stare and not blink. And you? You've just been hired as the divine distraction. You zip across the sky, staff twirling, curls bouncing, sandals sparkling. As you fly, you hum softly, snippets of that first Lyre melody, the one that melted Apollo's temper like butter on a stone. You land just out of Argus's peripheral vision, which is no small feat given, well, the 100 eyes. He's sitting beneath a sycamore, tall as a temple wall, eyelids fluttering in rotations like a very alert wind chime. You approach casually, whistling. He notices you. Obviously, you're not supposed to be here. Argus says flatly, I'm not supposed to be a baby. Either. You reply with a wink. He doesn't laugh. But you're not here for laughs. You're here to perform. You pluck your lyre from your side and begin to play. Softly, gently, a lullaby. Really, notes drifting up like sleepy perfume. You pace slowly, weaving a story into your song, not with words, but with rhythm, a musical tale about a herdsman who watches the stars, then dreams he's one of them. A tale about vigilance and rest. About eyes that close not from weakness, but from trust. And Argus listens. One by one, his eyes begin to droop. 10, then 20, then 47. Historians still argue whether it was the music itself, or something magical you wove into it with your new staff. But either way, it works. 86, 93, 99, and finally, 100. Argus sleeps, possibly dreams of cows. You gently set down the lyre and approach Io, still in cow form. Still wide-eyed and visibly over this entire situation. You whisper, "It's okay. I'm a professional," and untie her from the tree. Zeus is already waiting nearby in the form of a cloud, which is either romantic or deeply impractical. You give him a thumbs up and fly off before Hera even realizes something's amiss. Now, here's a quirky historical tidbit. After Argus's demise, spoiler, Hera finds out. She's so upset that she takes his 100 eyes and places them on the tail of her sacred peacocks. So next time you see one fanning out that iridescent display? Yeah, that's ancient security system guild. Back on Olympus, the gossip spreads like wildfire. Did you hear Hermes put Argus to sleep with music? He what? Yeah. And then just walked off with the cowgirl. Legend. You don't say anything. You just pluck a lazy chord on your lyre and let the stories grow legs of their own. At this point, your reputation has taken root. You're no longer just the kid who stole cows or invented a stringed instrument out of reptile remains. You're Hermes. With a capital, don't mess with me. Zeus starts giving you more messages to deliver. Athena occasionally asks you to carry blueprints. Even Poseidon gives you a nod of approval, rare, but satisfying. You're moving in and out of divine circles. A whisper between gods, a blur between realms, and you're not just delivering information anymore. You're shaping it. After the Argus episode, and let's be honest, episode doesn't quite capture the level of absurd brilliance you pulled off. You start to notice something new. Doors open a little quicker when you arrive. Mortals murmur your name when they find lost things. And among the gods, there's a quiet shift. You're no longer the baby who lied adorably. You're the closer, the fixer, the in-between, and with great reputation comes greater opportunity for more weird projects. Which brings us to your next accidental invention, the written word. Or at least, something very close to it. You're lounging under a fig tree one afternoon, sandals untied, nibbling on honey cakes, when a bored shepherd stumbles into your shade. He's muttering to himself, trying to remember how many goats he left tied to which post and whether the one with the weird ear has wandered off again. You offer help. Naturally, you pluck a stick from the ground and begin drawing in the dirt, lines, angles, squiggles. Each symbol represents something. One goat. Two goats. Weird ear goat. The shepherd nods along, fascinated. Is this magic? He asks. You shrug. It's called not forgetting things. He runs off, shouting about a god who draws talking pictures. You roll your eyes but can't help smiling. That evening, you refine the symbols. You doodle animal tracks, sun patterns, wind curves. You add your own flair. Obviously, tiny jokes embedded in the code. Because if people are going to use your writing, you want them to chuckle centuries later. Now, full disclosure. Mainstream historians will tell you the Greeks borrowed their writing system from the Phoenicians, and they're not wrong. But in the mythological canon, you get credit. You, the clever god, doodling language into the dust with a fig-stained stick. And that's where the scholarly debate begins. Some ancient texts credit you as the father of letters. Others say you merely popularized what mortals were already doing with clay and scratchy reeds. Historians still argue whether the alphabet was born in one brilliant moment or slowly evolved through cultural osmosis. But in the stories, Hermes was there, humming to himself, inventing things on accident like it was a sport. Quirky aside, there's even a minor cult on a forgotten Cycladic island that worships you not just as the messenger god, but as Hermes the scribbler. Their temples are covered in strange carvings, swirls, stars, and awkward goat sketches that suspiciously resemble your early prototypes. And once you realize people are copying your symbols, you double down. You begin sending messages between mortals, short notes scratched on bark or etched into stone. Declarations of love, secret trades, warnings about incoming raids. You even start experimenting with codes. Because what's the fun of information if it doesn't come with a little mystery? Soon enough, merchants call on you for fast contracts. Poets whisper your name before reciting verses. Even politicians, yes, even back then, try to butter you up for divine endorsements. Your power grows in the quiet spaces, between the spoken and the written. Between what's said aloud and what's meant. But writing is only half the game. The other half? Listening. You begin hearing the prayers of mortals differently now. Not just the grand sacrifices or tearful pleas, but the small things. The kid who lost his sandals. The farmer who just wants his fig tree to bear fruit this year. The traveler praying for dry weather and a not too talkative donkey. And you respond, not with lightning or plagues, not with miracles carved into the sky, with a breeze. A lucky coin in the dirt. A sudden idea whispered into the mind like a memory that wasn't there a second ago. That's the Hermes touch. Subtle, clever, often funny, always useful. You're not just a messenger anymore. You're a communicator. You're a connector. You are, in a very real way, the god of meaning. You're perched on the edge of a rooftop now. Athens below you. Humming like a hive, the wind ruffles your curls as you lean back against a chimera statue and nibble lazily on a pomegranate. Down in the agora, philosophers argue, merchants haggle, lovers quarrel, and children chase goats that probably aren't theirs. And through it all, you are present, not in a thunderous Zeus kind of way. Not in a statue of a god who never leaves his temple way. But in the Hermes way. A shadow in motion. A whisper in the ear. A laugh on the wind. Your winged sandals dangle off the ledge as you reach into your satchel and pull out your newest invention. The world's first delivery list. Scribbled on a scroll in your own coded shorthand. It contains a week's worth of divine errands. It reads, deliver soul to Hades, friendly. Not urgent. Nudge philosopher awake during debate. Make sure baker doesn't forget mother's birthday. Return golden apple. Accidentally, borrowed by Aphrodite. Restring lyre. Again. See, being a god of movement means you're everywhere. On the roads between cities. In the silence before a speech. In the sigh someone lets out before they say yes instead of no. You're not the god of conclusions. You're the god of next steps. Today, your first errand takes you back to the mortal world, specifically. A tiny temple in Boeotia, where a group of overly enthusiastic potters have decided to start praying to you for good trade routes and faster shipping. You arrive in the usual Hermes way, mid-sentence. Mid-breeze. They gasp. One guy drops a vase. You give them a wink. Delivery accepted. Their offerings are humble, clay sandals, a little figurine of you with eyes far too big, and a loaf of bread shaped like a wing. You accept them all graciously. Mainstream fact? Worship of Hermes was surprisingly widespread, not just as a trickster, but as a god who helped. He was especially loved by travelers, merchants, and athletes. Small shrines called Hermes were planted along roads and in front of houses, square pillars with your head and, well, let's just say some very bold anatomical features that no Greek artist ever shied away from. After blessing their pottery and telling them, gently, that their Hermes figurine makes you look like you swallowed a bee, you take off again. Next destination, the stadium. There's a race happening today. Mortals sprinting in a dusty oval for the favor of the gods. A few shout your name as they run, believing that invoking you will make them faster. And you know what? You honor that. You whisper into the breeze behind one runner. A struggling boy with sandals too big and hope too loud. Just enough push. Not unfair. Not miracle level. Just a nudge. He wins. Falls to his knees afterward. Cries. Praises Hermes. You smile. Soaring above the finish line like a leaf caught on momentum. Now, here's a quirky detail from the ancient sources. Hermes was said to have invented foot races. Not just participated in them, but actually started them. Some say it was your way of getting mortals to appreciate speed. Others believe you just like to watch people try to move as quickly as you do. Historians still argue whether those early races were spiritual rituals or just a way to burn off energy before dinner. Either way, the name Hermes is now synonymous with swiftness. Not just the body, but the mind, the message, the moment between silence and speech. Later that evening, you return to Olympus. The moon is rising like a slow drumbeat. Apollo nods as you pass. Athena gives you a half smile. Even Ares offers a grunt of recognition, which, from him, is basically a standing ovation. You don't linger. You've never been one for banquets or speeches. You have places to be, moments to slip into, people to help in ways they'll never quite understand. You are the god of going. And so you go. Tonight, you walk instead of fly. Sometimes, even gods need the rhythm of their own footsteps. No winged sandals, no flash, just bare soles on cool stone. Tracing a quiet path along a moonlit road that coils down from Mount Olympus into the hills. Your caduceus taps gently with each step. The stars above blink like lazy fireflies. You hum something soft, an unfinished melody. Maybe the beginning of a song you'll never write down. Or maybe you already did. Back when you invented the alphabet. Hard to keep track. This road, narrow and barely lit, is one you've walked many times. It's not marked on any map. It curves through memories, not geography. Tonight it leads to a mortal village where a midwife has whispered your name. She doesn't know it, but you've heard her, somewhere between a heartbeat and a prayer. Her daughter is laboring. The family dog keeps pacing the threshold. A candle flickers low, and on the table beside the bed, tucked among folded towels and a cup of rainwater, Someone has placed a little carved figure. It's you. Wide-brimmed hat, winged shoes, crooked smile. You lean in through the open window, unseen, of course, and let your fingers brush the wind just enough to calm the mother's breath. The pain dulls. The baby turns. A new cry rises up, soft and bright, like a fresh note plucked from your lyre. And just like that, the village has one more child. Another traveler about to begin a journey they don't know they're on. Let's pause for a mainstream footnote. Hermes was often invoked at moments of birth and death. Not because he caused either, but because he was believed to guide souls across thresholds. First breath, last sigh, those were Hermes' moments. You don't stay long. You never do. The family won't remember the breeze that lifted the candle smoke, or the sudden warmth in the room, but they'll remember that everything felt just a little easier than expected. Your next stop is farther. Darker. A battlefield. Not today's, but yesterday's. The fighting is over. Spears broken. Banners torn. The dead lie still. But the souls? The souls are waiting. They hover. Uncertain. Stuck in the space between scream and silence. And you? You arrive with a soft glow and a voice like the last chord of a lullaby. You don't speak. You don't need to. They follow. This is the part of the job no one celebrates. No statues. No songs. Just souls. Just walking. But you walk with them. All the way to the place where Karen waits. He nods at you this time. No grunting. Progress. You hand over a few coins someone left with the bodies. Not enough for all, but you make it work. You always do. The souls drift onto the ferry. Some look back, some don't. You linger for a moment longer. Until even the shadows grow quiet again. A quirky detail? In some lesser-known regions of ancient Greece, people believed that if Hermes wasn't properly honored, souls would get lost on the way to the underworld. They'd wander, confused, caught between worlds. So every doorway, every grave marker, every roadside shrine, carried just a hint of your name. Just in case. Back above ground, the night is soft again. You stretch, crack your knuckles. You've done your duty, again. But this isn't about duty. It's about presence. Being there when others can't, or won't, or don't know they need someone there. And no matter how many gods raise temples or hurl lightning or demand blood, you work in the spaces between. Where things shift, where meaning happens. You turn back toward the road. Sandals whispering, staff swinging, a few stars wink overhead. There's another prayer already rising from a sailor caught in a storm. Time to move. The storm arrives before you do. Because storms never wait for anyone, not even gods. You hear it first. Distant thunder. Low and lazy. Rumbling like Zeus snoring through a meeting. Then comes the salt-stung wind. Sharp and urgent. And finally, through the clouds, you spot the ship. A creaky little trireme. Tossed like a leaf across the wine-dark sea. It's not a warship. Not a merchant vessel, either. Just a family, poor. Brave. Stubborn. Trying to make it from one island to another before the next harvest. Their sail is half torn. One of the oars snapped hours ago. The mast? Let's just say it's more suggestion than structure at this point. And on deck, huddled beneath a soaked blanket, a boy clutches a wooden charm. It's you. Again. Carved sloppily from driftwood. More blob than God. But unmistakable. The winged hat. The impish grin. The crooked staff. You hover above the clouds for a moment, watching. This isn't about saving them with a bolt of divine drama. That's more Poseidon's style anyway. Loud entrances, crashing waves, everything smelling like fish. You're here for something quieter. You descend on the wind. Your feet never quite touch the deck. But the boy sees you anyway, half asleep, half delirious, and entirely certain that help has arrived. You tap the mast lightly with your staff. It stops creaking. The wind shifts, just slightly, and begins to push instead of pull. Below deck, the father finds a dry patch of bread he swore was gone. The rope knots untangled just a bit more easily. And the stars, previously smothered in storm clouds, peek through like old friends waking up. You whisper nothing, just breathe, and that's enough. A mainstream fact worth noting. Sailors in ancient Greece frequently prayed to you before long voyages, not because you ruled the sea, but because you ruled the journey. The in-between. You were the one who got them through. Back on shore, the storm passes. A few olives fall from trees in surprise. Somewhere, a temple bell rings just once, accidentally. Or maybe not. But your work doesn't pause. Next, you find yourself in a marketplace. Not a glamorous one, just a dusty plaza where vendors yell about onions, figs, and questionable discounts. A little girl's been accused of stealing. The stallkeeper is yelling. The mother is crying. The crowd is gathering. You watch from the shadows of a fig cart. Arms crossed. You can smell the truth before anyone speaks. The girl didn't steal anything. She simply dropped a coin, rolled under the table, hidden beneath a basket of turnips no one's bought since last month. You slip through the space between arguments. Bend down, flick the coin back into the sunlight with your staff. It skitters to a stop right next to the girl's foot. Everyone stares. She picks it up slowly, wide-eyed. The stallkeeper coughs. The crowd disperses. And the girl? She glances toward the fig cart. You wink. She gasps. You vanish. That's another thing about your job. Most people never know it's you. They think it's luck, or timing, or fate. But really, it's you keeping things moving. A quirky fringe detail here. Some ancient Greeks believed you could walk among mortals undetected, testing their honesty and generosity. Old men with crooked staffs, young boys with odd eyes, strangers with suspiciously comfortable sandals. You were everywhere and nowhere, like a trick or a test. The sun begins to set now, dyeing the rooftops in rose gold. You perch atop a weather vane shaped like a rooster and watch as the day winds down. Mortals finish their trades. Children chase cats. Priests mumble prayers they barely believe. You hum again, same melody, different rhythm. And just as night fully slips across the land, you take off. Because somewhere out there, a poet is about to forget the last line of his poem. And he's going to need your help. You arrive just as the ink dries. The poet sits alone on a stone step outside his home, scroll beside him. Hands in his hair, eyes full of panic. He's written 12 perfect lines. A hymn to love or memory or olive oil, unclear. And now, nothing. The final verse has fled. Vanished. Evaporated into the night like a wine-drenched dream. He groans. You, naturally, find this hilarious. You perch atop a low wall behind him, silent and invisible, watching as he mutters lines under his breath. He crosses out whole stanzas. then uncrosses them, then eats a grape in despair. The cat beside him yawns with theatrical disinterest. You lean forward and whisper, very softly, just 4 words. He gasps, eyes wide. That's it, he cries. He scrambles for his stylus and finishes the verse in a flurry of scribbles. You smirk. Another masterpiece. Delivered anonymously. As always. Now, here's your mainstream mythology fact for the night. Although Apollo was considered the god of poetry, you were the one who sparked the sudden, fleeting ideas, the lightning strikes of inspiration that arrived in the middle of the night or right before the ink dried. Historians still argue whether the Greeks had a formal name for this specific role you played. But in practice, you were the muse's courier. The moment between blank page and genius. And you never asked for credit. That's the thing about you. Isn't it? Unlike your flashier relatives, you don't demand temples made of marble or week-long festivals with roasted bulls. Your offerings are smaller, quieter, left under stones, carved into tree bark, whispered at thresholds and crossroads. Which, incidentally, is where you're headed next. Because somewhere beyond the city walls, beneath the crooked branches of a sacred oak, there's a crossroad where 3 paths meet. And at the center of that junction stands, you. Or rather, one of your statues. Short, square, and frankly a little rude-looking. A Herm. Now, let's pause for a quirky historical tidbit. Herms were everywhere in ancient Greece. Stone markers with your head on top and, how to put this gently, a rather bold representation of masculinity on the front. They weren't subtle, but they were sacred. Travelers touched them for luck. Merchants prayed to them for safe business deals. And suspicious mothers rubbed them to protect their sons. True story. Tonight, an old woman stands at your Herm. She's wrapped in a threadbare cloak, carrying a basket of figs and a question she's afraid to speak aloud. Her husband has been sick. Her neighbor is cruel. Her dreams have started whispering in languages she doesn't know. She places a coin at the base of your statue. Just show me the right road. She murmurs. That's all I ask. You don't appear. You don't sing. You just move a pebble. Tiny. Harmless. But it shifts the weight of her basket slightly. Just enough for her to turn left instead of right. And that's all it takes. She'll meet a traveler on that path. One who knows herbs. Who carries stories. Who will teach her something new. Not a miracle. Just a nudge. That's what you do best. And it's why your name is whispered more often than shouted. Why even the gods trust you with their errands. Their secrets. Their souls. Because you don't just go between worlds. You carry possibility. Later, you find yourself seated beside a campfire, uninvited. Unseen. Where a group of traveling singers pass around a half-full wineskin and try to remember the lyrics to an old ballad. One starts humming a melody. The others join in. It's clumsy, off-key, and perfect. You don't play your lyre tonight. You just tap your foot along. They're singing about a god with winged feet, a silver tongue, and a habit of helping when no one else would. They get most of it wrong. But the feeling? That's right. It's nearly dawn now, and the air tastes like beginnings, cool, quiet, a little sweet with fig blossoms and dew. You've spent the night as a whisper, a wink, a thought that came just in time. Now, the world stirs again. Mortal feet hit dirt roads. Hearth fires crackle back to life. Roosters declare sovereignty over rooftops. And you? You're halfway up a cliff, dangling by one hand, trying to retrieve a lost sandal. It belongs to a boy who dropped it yesterday while fleeing from a goat. The goat was also fleeing from a bee. The bee? No comment. You don't have to retrieve it. But you do. Because you are the god of things that go missing. Of items tucked in sleeves. Of keys dropped in wells. Of love letters that slide behind furniture and aren't found until years later, when the recipient has gray hair and watery eyes. And when something disappears, people pray to you, sometimes with words, sometimes just with a sigh and a hopeful glance at the sky. Mainstream mythology moment. The Greeks called upon you not only for travel and trade but for recovery. When things, or people, went missing, your name was invoked. A whispered, Hermes, bring it back, was often the final resort after logic had failed. You pocket the sandal and climb the rest of the way up the cliff. Where the boy is snoring under a fig tree, still waiting for the sun to warm the stone, you place the sandal beside him, gently, and steal one of his grapes in return. A fair trade. From there, you leap into the wind again, soaring over a valley where shepherds call out to their flocks. One of them is crying. His favorite sheep has wandered off. You drop a hint, literally. A single white tuft snagged on a bush. Fluttering in the breeze, the shepherd gasps and follows the trail. Another tiny miracle, unbranded and unsigned. But not everything you do is sweet. Sometimes, the in-between gets messy. Because today, you're also headed to a courtroom. Not an elegant one on Olympus. A mortal one, dusty, loud, full of accusations and cracked amphorae. Two merchants are arguing over whose olives are better. It's escalated into insults, threats, and, somehow, a broken chariot wheel. The judge looks tired. The jury looks bored. And both sides have called upon you as their divine witness. Which is flattering, but inconvenient. You weren't there when the olives were picked. But you were there when one of them secretly watered his grove with the runoff from a fish market. Spoiler. Do not recommend. You don't testify. That's not your style. Instead, as the merchants argue, you nudge a nearby donkey. It wanders onto the platform, sniffs one merchant's basket, immediately recoils from the fishy olives. The crowd erupts in laughter. The judge raises an eyebrow. Case dismissed. You disappear before anyone can offer a thank you. Let's drop a fringe fact. In some rural Greek festivals, disputes were settled with tests involving animals, dogs choosing between suspects, goats reacting to foods, chickens pecking at names. Not exactly scientific, but surprisingly effective. And while no one wrote it down officially, stories often hinted that Hermes had a hand in these coincidences. You return to Olympus briefly, not to rest, but to resupply. Your satchel is running low on scrolls. You grab a new one from Hephaestus's forge, don't ask how, he wasn't looking. You refill your inkpot with liquid nightshade and collect 3 apples you definitely did not steal from Aphrodite's private orchard. Apollo passes you in the corridor. Still playing mailman? He smirks. You smile. Still pretending you invented music? He glares. You both laugh. That's the thing about Olympus. It's a mountain of grudges and glories. A divine soap opera in constant reruns. And you? You move through it like a breeze, untouchable. Untethered. Not because you're the strongest. Not because you're the wisest. but because you don't stop. You keep moving. And in a world that's constantly shifting, that might be the most powerful thing of all. You're walking now, barefoot through a field of barley that brushes your ankles like a sleepy cat. The morning sun has just cleared the mountains, casting the kind of light that turns everything gold for no reason except to remind you the world can be beautiful without explanation. You whistle, and a butterfly flutters out from a stalk, spiraling up like a lazy thought. It follows you for a while, then gets distracted and wanders off. You smile. Same. This field? It's on no map. It shifts locations. One day it's in Attica, the next in Thessaly, sometimes in the dream of a child, sometimes just off the edge of someone's memory. You visit it when you need to breathe, when even winged sandals feel too heavy and the weight of all your errands hums a little too loudly in your bones. You sit, stretch your legs, open your satchel. Inside, tucked between soul scrolls and olive pit charms, is a letter, not written by a mortal, but by another god, Athena. In fact, it's crisp, folded precisely, and smells faintly of ink and logic. She's requested your help, again, with a mortal city trying to invent a better tax system. You groan. She always sends you the most organized problems. Still, you'll go. You always go. Because you know what they don't. Progress depends on motion. Even if it's bureaucratic. Here's your mainstream nugget. In some ancient Greek traditions, you were also associated with invention, not just the flashy kind, like lyres or letters, but practical tools, too. Weighing scales, measures, trade tokens, anything that helped humans move goods and ideas more efficiently had your fingerprints on it. But before you go solve the mystery of missing drachmas, you pay a visit to one of your oldest fans. She's a priestess now, blind, nearly 90, with hands like gnarled tree roots and a laugh that still makes doors open. She doesn't worship you in marble halls or with expensive offerings. She keeps a pebble on her windowsill, smooth and worn from years of thumb rubs. It used to be part of a Hermes. She talks to it every morning. Bring my son home safe. She says, help my bones behave today. She doesn't know you're here. Standing quietly at the edge of her olive grove, watching as she shuffles toward the garden. She doesn't need to know. Her son? Already on his way. Her bones? You nudge the ache back a notch. A breeze lifts her shawl just enough to cool her neck. She smiles at the sky. You nod. Quirky tidbit? In remote Greek villages, even into the Roman period, people kept household stones they called travelers' eyes. They were believed to watch over journeys, both literal and emotional. Most scholars think these were connected to you. Whether they knew it or not, they were building their own tiny temples, one worn pebble at a time. By noon, you're in a bustling port town. Boats arrive from every direction, Phoenician traders, Egyptian spice barges, a rogue pirate ship flying 2 flags just to confuse people. You dart among them, unnoticed. You adjust a cargo weight here. Delay a customs guard there. A miscounted amphora becomes a lucky discovery for a widowed merchant. A sailor finds the necklace he lost last week under a pile of ropes he swore he'd already searched. Nothing huge. Just adjustments. Because you know what no one else does. The world runs on little balances. Not the dramatic kind, the gentle ones, the kind that slip in unnoticed and keep things from unraveling. Later that day, You're walking a dusty ridge trail when a girl appears beside you. She's maybe 8, barefoot, holding a feather. "Are you a god?" she asks bluntly. You raise an eyebrow. "Are you?" She grins. "Not yet." Fair answer. You don't answer her question. Because she already knows. She just wanted to ask it aloud. She offers you the feather. Found it in the road. Thought maybe it wanted to go somewhere. You accept it. Tuck it into your satchel. It does now. And just like that, she runs off. No prayers. No temples. No promises. Just motion. And in that moment, you remember why you chose to keep going all those centuries ago. When Zeus first offered you a place in Olympus and you asked, "Can I still walk the roads?" Because being in between isn't a limitation. It's your home. Twilight finds you walking a forest path that's just slightly too quiet. The air here is thick with pine and secrets. Branches arch overhead like vaulted ceilings. And the light filters through them in trembling shards, more memory than sunshine. You pause beside a fallen log. Tap your staff once against the earth. And whisper, "All right, come on out." A fox appears. Then another. Then 6 more. Together, they form a perfect circle. Blinking at you with eyes like amber marbles. You sigh. You again. They tilt their heads in unison. Clearly amused. You and these foxes have history. They're tricksters in their own right. Creatures that slip between the visible and the imagined. In some regions, they're said to be your messengers. Though frankly, they're mostly just here for the drama. You hand them a scroll. Deliver this to the oracle at Delphi. Be subtle. They scatter in a blur of russet and tail flicks. One pauses to steal your fig. Standard. You continue. At the edge of the forest, a man waits beside a milestone, clutching his walking stick like a lifeline. He's old, worn, the kind of tired that lives behind the eyes. He's lost, not geographically. He knows where the path leads. But something in his gaze says he isn't sure why he's still following it. You sit beside him, quiet, present. Roads feel longer at the end. He mutters without looking at you. You nod. He pulls something from his pouch, a worn coin. So old the face is smoothed away. Carried this since I was 16. For Karen, just in case. You take it gently, hold it to the light, then hand it back. Not yet, you say. He chuckles. Didn't think so. You vanish before he can thank you. But you hear it anyway. Mainstream reminder. You're the psychopomp, not the judge. Not the punisher. Just the guide. The one who knows when to speak softly and when to stay silent. But tonight, there's a different soul waiting for your help. A woman in Thebes is dying. Her breath is thin. Her family weeping quietly nearby. They don't see you enter. You don't need to knock. You kneel beside her. She sees you. Her hand is too weak to lift. But her eyes widen with recognition. You came, she whispers. Always. You reply. She smiles. And a tear slides into her gray hair. You hold her hand until it stops shaking. Then guide her gently toward the dream. No boats. No coins, just stars blinking open, one by one, as she slips into sleep. Quirky historical footnote. In some late classical depictions, Hermes isn't just present at death, he welcomes it. Artists painted you not with scythes or skulls, but with outstretched hands and soft eyes. You weren't feared, you were needed. The difference matters. After, you walk through the night with no destination. You stop to fix a cracked millstone. You retrieve a toddler's dropped doll before she can cry. You help a farmer find the right star to follow home. It's not glory. It's not war. It's not even music anymore. It's motion. Quiet. Constant. Sacred. You pause beneath a fig tree. Pull the feather from your satchel, the one the little girl gave you, and let it go. It spins upward, caught in a warm breeze, dancing until it disappears. And that's enough. Dawn again. You haven't slept. Gods like you don't really need to. But there's a heaviness in your limbs that suggests even divinity can grow weary. Not from effort, but from presence, from being everywhere, all the time, from weaving meaning into the little threads no one sees. You're perched atop a city wall now, watching Athens stretch and yawn. Rooftops glow with the promise of another complicated, ridiculous, wonderful day. You munch on a fig. It's overripe, perfect. Below, a group of students files into a small courtyard, led by a man in a rumpled robe muttering about ethics and shadows. You lean forward. This one's a philosopher. He's been praying to you for clarity, for a single thought to click into place before his next lecture. You give him 3. He pauses, blinks, jots something into the dust with a stick. His face lights up. You smile, then toss your fig pit into a passing cart full of onions. Here's the mainstream point. You were always more than a trickster. To the Greeks, you were intelligence in motion. Not the thunderous wisdom of Zeus. Not the impenetrable strategy of Athena, but a fluid cleverness. The kind that solves a problem not by breaking it, but by slipping through it. Like water, or wind, you drop from the wall and begin walking through the alleys. Someone yells your name, not a prayer, an accusation. A shopkeeper stands outside his booth. Furious. My scales are off, he shouts. The wheat's wrong. You stroll up, examining the offending balance. It's tilted, a coin wedged beneath one corner. You flick it out with your staff. The tray levels. The man blinks. How did you? You wink. God of merchants. He frowns. And thieves. Same thing. You whisper. Already gone. You duck into a side street where a little boy sits on a cracked step, clutching a scroll far too long for his arms. He's muttering the words, trying to memorize lines for school. He stumbles, stalls, starts to cry. You sit beside him. Try it like this, you say softly, adjusting the rhythm. He repeats it, haltingly. Then with confidence. He doesn't ask who you are. He doesn't have to. When he runs off to recite it proudly to his teacher, you lean back and exhale. You're everywhere, and yet somehow never there long enough to be noticed fully. You start moving again, and that's when you feel it. A tug, subtle, old, a soul caught. You head north. Up into the hills where an old shrine crumbles slowly into moss and stone. It hasn't been visited in years. Maybe decades. But someone buried something here, a memory. A regret. A question that never quite made it into words. It lingers. And now it's calling you. You pass through the fallen gate. Past toppled columns and faded offerings, dried flowers. Cracked beads. A piece of sandal strap. The energy is thin, barely a whisper. But you catch it. You kneel in the center of the shrine. Press your hand to the dirt. I'm listening, you say. And you are. Not because you have to. Because no one else will. And that's the fringe detail no one celebrates. You show up when no one else does. You are not the god of the final word. You're the god of the open-ended sentence. The one that trails off. The maybe. The what if. You close your eyes. The energy flickers, then rests. Not gone. Guided. You stand, dust off your knees, and glance skyward. The sun's climbing fast now. And your list isn't done. You snap your fingers. A breeze gathers. Your sandals lift. Time to move again. Because somewhere across the sea, a man is about to take the wrong road. And you? You're already on your way to stand at the fork. You reach the fork before he does. It's a simple one. Two dusty roads splitting beneath a crooked fig tree. One leads to shelter, rest, and a cup of wine with an old friend. The other? Bandits. A thrown stone. A limp that never fully heals. You stand in the middle. Invisible to most, but not to him. He approaches, muttering to himself, dust clinging to his robes. A traveling scribe, carrying nothing but ink-stained fingers and a satchel full of half-written dreams. He pauses, squints at both roads. One brow lifts in uncertainty. Which way? He asks no one. You don't answer. Instead, you let the wind shift, ever so gently. The fig tree sways, and a single leaf flutters down the right-hand path. He watches it land, nods, follows. That's all it takes. Sometimes your work is as soft as gravity, as simple as suggestion. You float after him for a while, making sure the road stays clear. A pothole fills in behind you. A wasp nest goes undisturbed. You hum a song that only his bones hear. And he walks with less weight than before. Mainstream mythology moment. Hermes wasn't just the god of grand journeys. He was the protector of the mundane ones. The errands. The pilgrimages. The just going to see my cousin in the next village paths. Ancient Greeks carved your symbols into mile markers and whispered your name at trailheads. Not to be heroic, but to be safe. Eventually, the scribe finds his friend's house. The wine is poured. A story begins. You smile. You leave. Not far from there, under a cluster of cypress trees. A game of dice is heating up. 5 men sit in a circle. One cheats. 2 suspect. One is losing more than just money. You step in, not to pick sides, but to balance the scale. You flick your staff. The dice wobble mid-roll. Land exactly as they should have the first time. The cheater winces. The rest cheer. Nobody notices the breeze. You walk on. And now, it's time for a slightly messier stop. A temple dispute. 2 priests. 1 statue. One very heated debate about whether you prefer your altars made from cedar or olive wood. They've gathered a crowd, waving scrolls and quoting conflicting oracles. Honestly, it's a little flattering. But the truth? You do not care. You step between them, invisible. You lean toward one and whisper an idea. Then to the other, a slightly different one. Within minutes, both declare the other has made an excellent point. They compromise. The crowd cheers. Someone starts composing a hymn on the spot. It's not very good. You leave before they start dancing. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. In some Hellenistic cults, debates and decisions were settled by invoking you, not because you were wise, but because you were practical. The God who gets things done. Your blessing wasn't about truth. It was about progress. That's the secret no one says out loud. You are the God of forward. Forward in maps. Forward in thought. Forward in time. Even now. as night begins to stretch across the sky like a cooling cloth. You're already miles ahead. A storm brews on the horizon. A letter needs delivering before the first drop falls. It's wrapped in lambskin and sealed with wax bearing Athena's mark. You take it, no question, no delay. And as you soar over the silver-tipped clouds, wind at your back and sandals trailing sparks, you hear something strange, a voice, clear, familiar, mortal, a child, back in the city, whispering into the dark, "Hermes, can you hear me?" You smile. You always do. The child's voice clings to the wind longer than most prayers do. It's not polished or poetic. It doesn't rhyme or invoke lineage. It's just 4 soft words, spoken into a pillow. "Hermes, can you hear me?" And you do. You're halfway to the Peloponnesian coast when it hits you, drifting into your ear like a moth into lamplight. You pause mid-air. The scroll from Athena is still tucked under your arm. But this takes precedence. Because this isn't a prayer of ambition, or desperation, or wealth. It's loneliness. You pivot, adjust the wind beneath your feet, and turn toward the voice. It leads you to a small rooftop in the poorer end of the city, where a boy sits with his back against a clay chimney, maybe 10 years old, sleepless, cradling a wooden bird he whittled himself. One wing broken, the kind of broken you don't cry about, because you've already cried too much this week. You land softly behind him. He doesn't see you, but he feels you. The wind stills. The air warms. He looks up, startled, then settles. Doesn't speak. You walk past him without a word and sit on the edge of the rooftop. Legs swinging. He inches closer. Close enough to hear you humming. Just a few notes from your Lyre's old song. Not too much. Just enough. Mainstream detail here. Children were some of your most frequent patrons. They prayed to you when their toys went missing, when they got lost on the way home, or when grown-ups didn't make sense. Some ancient amulets carved with your likeness were worn by children to protect against bad dreams and bad luck. You weren't just a god. You were company. The boy holds up the broken bird. You nod at it. Try again tomorrow. You whisper. He doesn't ask who you are. He smiles and whispers back. Okay. And that's enough. You vanish into the wind before he can blink, returning to your original path. The scroll's still waiting, and dawn's already flirting with the hills again. You arrive at the appointed place, a temple half built, scaffolding still up, workers asleep nearby. A raven lands on the altar as you approach. A sign from Athena. You leave the scroll tucked beneath a jar of olive oil, weighted with a pebble from your pocket. The raven caws once. Mission confirmed. Time for something lighter. You teleport, because walking's just inefficient at this hour, to a mountain meadow, where a group of satyrs are trying to invent a new kind of flute. They've carved holes into tree bark, into bird bones, into a hollowed gourd that sounds like someone gargling on a dare. You watch, deeply amused. Then you show them a trick. You pluck a reed, cut it just right, and blow a note that curls like smoke. Their jaws drop. One faints. You vanish again. Because that's the joy of being you. Intervention without ownership. You never stay for the applause. You don't want statues or sacrifices. Just a better song in the world. You land next in a village preparing for market day. The stalls are half built. The animals are restless. The fishmonger is arguing with a chicken farmer over who gets the corner spot. You tap your staff. The breeze flips the chalkboard sign. The chicken farmer suddenly realizes he didn't pay for his space. Problem solved. You wink at the goat chewing the rope that ties it to a pole. It bleats approvingly. Another quirky tidbit? In some forgotten cults, you were known as Hermes Agorius, Hermes of the marketplace. Not because you sold anything, but because you kept things moving. Goods, people, conversations, coin. You were the oil in the gears. The motion between the transaction and the handshake. Now, with the sun high again and your scrolls delivered, your errands complete, you find a patch of shade beneath a cypress tree. You sit, close your eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, you do nothing. Because even the god of motion needs a breath between steps. And even between that breath, you're still listening. You don't sleep. Gods like you drift. Hover. Uncoil. But this moment under the cypress feels close enough. A pause. A breath. A lull in the motion. Crickets chirp lazily in the grass. A snail inches across your sandal. You don't move. Then, a shift. Not a sound. Not a cry. Just that subtle tilt of the world that tells you something has gone just barely off track. A cart on the wrong road. A lie spoken too soon. A name forgotten at the wrong time. You sit up, brush a beetle from your sleeve, and listen. There. You follow the pull. It brings you to a small stone chapel tucked at the edge of a village. A place so quiet even the birds fly around it rather than over it. Inside, a young woman kneels at the altar. Hands clasped. Her lips move, but no sound comes. She's praying without knowing she is. Not for wealth, not even for help. Just direction. She's stuck between two choices. Her family wants her to marry. Her heart wants something else. She doesn't know the path. She's never been shown how to choose. You don't appear. You never do in moments like this. You simply blow a breeze through the cracked window. It lifts the corner of a tapestry, revealing an older image beneath, of a woman walking alone down a road. Carrying a staff, she looks up and smiles. You leave before the tears fall. Mainstream note. You are often invoked not in certainty, but in confusion, at crossroads, during negotiations, when decisions had to be made. Hermes wasn't the god of the right path. He was the god of movement itself, of choosing. Back outside, the sun is beginning its descent. You head into the hills where an old oracle lives, not Delphi. Not famous. Just a quiet woman with a quiet gift. She's been asking for a sign. You don't bring thunder. You don't bring omens. You bring a feather. The same one the little girl gave you. Carried in your satchel for days. You place it on her windowsill and let the wind do the rest. She'll know what it means. Next, you're in a dream. Immortals, of course. A boy, 12. He's wandering a vast field that keeps shifting shape, sometimes a forest. Sometimes a temple. Sometimes his childhood bedroom. He's lost. So you walk beside him. You don't explain. You just walk. And when he wakes, he'll remember only that someone kind was there. He'll have no name for it. But he'll choose more confidently tomorrow. That's your gift. Quirky tidbit? In ancient dream interpretation scrolls, dreams involving travel, especially with strange, helpful guides, were said to come from you. Not always prophetic, not always clear, but always gentle. Back in the waking world, the stars begin to show their faces again. The moon stretches slowly into the sky. You return to the city gates, where a traveler argues with a guard. Wrong pass. Wrong words. It's escalating. You flick a pebble at a nearby goat. It startles, runs through the legs of the guard. The commotion breaks the tension. Both men laugh. The gate opens. You disappear down an alley. Because again, your job isn't glory. It's grease. You keep the wheels spinning. You keep the fabric from tearing. You keep people from falling off the edge of their own paths. One nudge at a time. You end the night at a tavern. Not as a god, not as a shadow, but as a traveler, cloaked and smiling, seated at the edge of the room with a mug of something warm and sharp. A bard is telling a story, one about you, of course. Wildly inaccurate. You had nothing to do with the goose incident. But you let it slide. The tale gets laughs. Someone claps. Coins drop into a cup. And you? You lean back, sip your drink, and enjoy the sound of your name, moving. It's well past midnight now. The tavern has emptied, except for a couple asleep on a bench and the bartender snoring beside a barrel. You slip out unnoticed, like always, and step into the cool hush of the narrow street. The sky above is velvet black, pinpricked with stars, each one a flickering idea someone forgot to write down. You walk slowly. For once, you're not rushing to catch a soul, or carry a scroll, or whisper a decision into someone's ear. This time, you're just walking. Because even the god of motion needs to move for his own sake now and then. You climb a hill behind the town. One no mortal has named but every child has climbed at least once. At the top, there's a lone olive tree. Old and twisted, stubbornly growing from a crack in the rock. You sit beneath it and exhale. Then, you do something rare. You pull out your lyre. It's not the turtle shell anymore, not the first one. That's long since returned to the earth. This one is sleeker, polished, tuned from centuries of quiet plucking and adjustments between errands. Still, it holds the same note. That feeling of mischief dressed up as genius. Of invention that pretends it wasn't trying that hard. You play. A few slow chords. Nothing fancy. Just a song you haven't played in a while. The notes ripple through the night air. Dancing between stones. Over rooftops. Through dreams. A baby stirs and smiles in her sleep. A poet scribbles a forgotten line. A merchant stops worrying for the first time all week. A fox perks its ears and listens. It's not a lullaby. It's you. Not the errands. Not the missions. Not the tasks. Just Hermes. A little hungry. A little tired. A little proud of how many tiny, beautiful things you've helped not fall apart. You finish the song and set the lyre beside you. The wind picks up, just a little, and plays the strings once more. As if the world wants to echo you back. And then, just below the hill, a light flickers. A new prayer. You sigh, but you're smiling. Of course there's more. There's always more. You stand, stretch, and grab your staff. The world is still spinning. Still arguing. Still asking questions it doesn't know how to say aloud. And you? You're already walking. Already halfway there. Because someone just lost their way. And you're the God who finds people in the in-between. Wind down, 300 words. So now, dear listener, it's your turn to rest. Let the night settle around you like a soft cloak. Let your thoughts, however tangled or tired, slowly uncoil like sandals unlaced at the end of a long walk. The roads you travel, Both the real and the imagined can wait until morning. There are no scrolls to deliver right now. No crossroads to choose. No clever words to speak. Just breath. Just stillness. Let the stars in your ceiling fade into darkness. Let the flicker of candlelight in your chest dim to an ember. Whatever worries followed you to bed, let them keep walking. They'll get tired before you do. You've wandered far enough for one night. And Hermes? He's still out there, somewhere, maybe perched on your windowsill. Maybe curled inside the hum of your fan. Maybe tucked beneath your pillow in the shape of a half-remembered dream. He's not there to wake you. He's just passing through, quiet, smiling, keeping the world turning in all the small, invisible ways. So close your eyes now. And drift. Because the god of movement has everything under control. End of script. Sweet dreams.